He's gonna have to fight! Bang! Pressure's coming! Dumped! Hogtied! When you've given everything, what will the record books say about you, Matt?
Hey, welcome back for Season 2, Episode 39 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Last week, we had Fantasy Football Friday, giving out some playoff tips and tricks to set you up for your championship run. Then the Clippers and Chris Paul suffered the kind of messy breakup that older stars typically don't get. And we wrapped up with a couple of predictions for the MLB winter meetings. There are some seismic changes, there are some big names that have moved, and the markets are still going to get pushed. These meetings run Monday to Thursday. There was no Tarik Skubal mega trade yet. And this week, we are going to crack it open with a living legend that is unretiring and getting thrust into the playoff hunt on a nosediving team in the NFL. It would have been tough to avoid the news about Phillip Rivers this week, and it came about following a season-ending Achilles tear for the Colts starting QB Daniel Jones. Man, Jones was so good for so long, notice the past tense, to start the year, and then the cracks started showing for him and the entire Colts offense right around midseason. Jonathan Taylor looked like he could, run away with Offensive Player of the Year and maybe win MVP in the early part, and now he's looked a little bit more human as he's facing a bunch of 8-man boxes and run pressures. Daniel Jones took 12 sacks and threw 4 picks in weeks 9 and 10 combined. Plus, I can't remember seeing this recently, he fumbled 3 times in each of those games. Then he started popping up on the injury report, and everything made a little bit more sense. Last week, in their game against the Jaguars, one bad step, his Achilles goes snap, and Riley Leonard, their 6th-round rookie backup quarterback, the guy just could not put the ball on target when he was forced in there. The Colts were smacked 36-19. They left with no viable quarterback, and they had seen their 8-2 record turn into an 8-5 record in 3 weeks. They were passed up in their division by both the Texans and Jaguars during that stretch, who both beat them head-to-head. An insane fall from grace this was. They were Super Bowl favorites for so long, and now the consensus is they're not even going to make the playoffs. Indy's one and only hope for some reason is 44-year-old Phillip Rivers, who has been retired since 2020. This man has 10 kids. After retirement, he went on to coach high school football. He's a current Hall of Fame semifinalist, right? Because you got that 5-year waiting period after you retire. He would have been eligible for the 2026 class. And apparently he still has not had enough of football. He famously ended his career, or so we thought, with the Colts in that 2020 season, and he really made some magic. Rivers was already in Tom Brady territory in terms of age and mileage on his body the year before, back in 2019, when the Chargers, his team of 16 years, chose to get a little bit younger and move on from him. He led the Colts to an 11-5 record that year, throwing for 4,000 yards for the 12th time in his career. It's objectively hilarious that he's going to come in and be granted Daniel Jones' number 17 too. And to be fair, I think that the guy with 421 career touchdown passes deserves it over the one who's best known for tripping on a turf monster on what should have been the easiest 88-yard quarterback rushing touchdown ever. In fact, I'm going to link that video of the play again. I know it was from 5+ years ago, but it just gets better with age. I'm sorry, DJ. They're going to need better play from Rivers than even what they were getting from Daniel Jones in the early part of the year if they want to leap over both the Texans and Jaguars. Tom Brady is recent proof that it's possible to succeed at 44 years old, and of course, he famously retired and unretired himself. The likelihood that Rivers is going to be the exact same kind of QB that he was 5 years ago and lead this Colts team to the playoffs and beyond, yeah, don't count on it, but man, it's an awesome story. To the MLB winter meetings now. Talked a lot about them last week. There's plenty more to say today. There are so many typically credible sources that were all murmuring and trying to tell us that the Dodgers had a deal in place for Tigers ace Tarik Skubal. I still believe that they did have that package on the table and probably had presented it to Detroit. But the rumors about the package were that it was probably 3 high-level prospects, yet not even necessarily LA's 3 best. That's what gets me. You obviously would have had to get a starting pitching prospect back. And as Skubal is the only left-hander in the Tigers' rotation, one would prefer it to be a lefty. And the funniest part is that right now, on Thursday, if you Google Tarik Skubal trade, you can find completely opposite takes or viewpoints within a few results of each other on the very first page, as I did. Unfortunately, Scott Harris, the Tigers' president, had to throw fuel on the fire this week in an interview stating that there are, quote, no untouchables on the roster. He went on to say that it's not just a Skubal thing, that it's a whole roster-building philosophy, and I will say he's certainly operated that way ever since stepping in, but it is frustrating for a team that clearly has not gone all in to win this coming year, that has not made any major additions. Frankly, I was pretty surprised when they extended that qualifying offer to Gleyber Torres at second base. They have a core that can make the playoffs each year, but is not going to really dominate anybody. They still benefit highly from being in a very not-so-good AL Central. You kind of have to have Skubal go back-to-back with the Cy Young and will them to win all the time. A fun stat that I saw when researching for this episode in The Athletic is the Tigers have a 42-20 record in games that Skubal has started in the last 2 regular seasons. In all other games, they are a combined 131 and 131, a perfect 500 record. That means, with Skubal, a 110-win pace for a full regular season. And with anybody else, missing the playoffs every single year. Though the deal wasn't done before the winter meetings wrapped up, there's still a full offseason to go. The big holdup continues to be that, again, Skubal is not a free agent yet. Somebody would have to extend him for something ridiculous after 2026. People have speculated that that's going to be in that $400 to $500 million range, and they're probably right. It would probably take him, 8 or 10 years down the line with 40 or 50 million per year, and I think it would be totally deserved. But you never know who can afford to commit that much to him. Second prediction from last week. As of now, the Cardinals' Nolan Arenado is still awaiting a trade partner. It's starting to get awkward that this likely future Hall of Fame guy is sort of looking completely unwanted. But the years and the money left on his contract are such killers. It's not really his fault, but there is 2 years and $37 million still to be paid out. I loved Miguel Cabrera. He was my favorite Tiger and my favorite ball player in general, and still is. But there were some completely injury-riddled years toward the end of his career where Detroit would have probably liked to offload his contract to somebody else. At the time his deal was signed in 2014, he was 31 years old, and he had just won back-to-back MVPs with a triple crown in there for good measure. It's fair to say that he was the best player in the world at that point. And plenty of people would, of course, argue for Mike Trout with good reason. But my point is, Cabrera's peak was much higher than Arenado's ever was, and there was no viable way to get him off that roster if him or the team had wanted that. Arenado topped out at third in MVP voting in 2018 and 2022. He's under 2,000 career hits. He probably at this point won't get to 400 home runs. He's at 353, and his power has just kind of fallen off of a cliff. And by any other measure offensively, he was below league average last year. I probably downplayed some of his career decline last episode because I assumed someone would still want him for his glove and his veteran presence. I'll link an awesome article on the Arenado situation in the description as well. The guy already turned down a trade to the Astros last year because, of course, he has a full no-trade clause, and he can be just as stubborn as the team is. The front office outright said that they're not going to release him, which could have sped things up dramatically in finding him another team. Instead, they're going to hold out, they're going to get everything they can out of him, and they've already left the winter meetings without moving him. This is the number one time of year when it's easy to make a move, and no matter the direction or the terms, St. Louis couldn't do it. There's too many veterans in that roughly 30 to 35 age range that are caught in this spot. Granted, more often as free agents than just disgruntled employees. It's like you're not going to be guaranteed to remain an everyday player on your current team, but then you can't promise that you'd provide a ton of value on a potential new team. I still believe that Arizona makes the most sense as a destination for Arenado, and there's at least 2 reasons why. One is the fact that they're the 4th youngest team in the league by average age, and they could use more of that veteran presence. And 2 is the fact that they only have $114 million committed to their payroll for 2026, which ranks 14th in the league. The Diamondbacks lost their last 5 games of the year. If they had won 4 out of those 5, they would have finished 84-78 and made the playoffs over the Reds. They're already a good team that doesn't need a ton of power out of a third baseman, and they have the funds to make this happen. Don't be surprised now that league meetings are done if it takes until spring training to get anything done here. But Nolan Arenado will not be on the Cardinals and will not be done playing baseball in 2026. Book it now. The final prediction that I made was largely inspired by Cal Raleigh and the 60 home run season. I thought that the market for relief pitching and catching would get reset big time. So catchers might have to wait, but they'll probably get their time. Relief pitching, totally different story. Edwin Diaz, the mercurial closer for the Mets, is now the highest paid reliever in league history, and he's taking his talents to downtown LA, just like every other high-profile free agent ever. When you've won the World Series back-to-back years, there's no great argument that anti-Moneyball strategy doesn't work. The specifics on his contract with the Dodgers are 3 years, $69 million, and a provision that he will be cut and the contract is void if they don't three-peat in the World Series next year. I made that last part up. So Edwin Diaz is really good at baseball. He's gotten Rookie of the Year, MVP, and Cy Young votes before, on top of 3 All-Star appearances and probably a couple of snubs in 9 full years in the league. His career strikeout per 9 rate and strikeout to walk ratio, they look like typos on the stat sheet. 14.5 Ks per 9, 4.61 walks per strikeout. He will be effectively wild at times. He'll hit some guys at 100 up and in, or he'll spike a slider at 90. And he is only a 2-pitch pitcher for what that's worth with that fastball and slider. Still, he could be an everyday closer. He could be a high-leverage matchup guy. He could be a true 7th or 8th inning setup man, or any combination of those. The one surprising part of the deal is Diaz does turn 32 years old right before this regular season starts. 3 years from now, is he still going to be putting up a 1.63 ERA like he did this year? Well, that's highly unlikely. Not very long ago, most relievers beyond 30 wouldn't get anything more than 1 year at a time. If Diaz fights off that aging curve better than most, it's still tough to say that $23 million a year for any reliever is a great value. It's about a third of what Shohei Ohtani or Juan Soto make per year if you want something to relate it to, and the guy throws 1 inning at a time. Markets are markets, and so Diaz might hold this title for this year of the highest paid reliever, but by next year I think this could be reset again up to $25 million, which is kind of where I thought it would end up for this year. Catchers might still gain a lot of ground this year. I just read a list on MLB.com of all the free agents available this offseason, and 20 of them are catchers, most of them veterans. So losing Edwin Diaz was bad for the Mets, but you know what's dramatically worse? Losing Pete Alonso. The polar bear, one of the great power hitters in the game, has decided to take his talents further up the East Coast and sign a whale of a deal with the Orioles. 5 years, $155 million. This is the second biggest contract the Orioles have ever given out, just $6 million shy of another great slugger, Chris Davis. And it makes Pete the highest paid first baseman ever by average annual value, topping the Jays' Vlad Guerrero Jr. A bit of a caveat there, Jr.'s got a complicated contract. That deal is 14 years, $500 million, and the signing bonus makes up over 60% of it, and then the hit from the signing bonus is spread out for a really long time. Alonso's deal is much more straightforward. He benefited from being the top available first baseman on the market, with Vlad having signed his deal in April. And he benefited more from the kind of performance that he had this year in a contract year. Pete played all 162 games for the second straight year, hit 38 more home runs, and he led the NL in doubles with 41. He even had a career-high average of .272, won his first Silver Slugger somehow, which is shocking, and he generally struck fear into pitchers every single day. First off, what a move it is by Baltimore of all teams. They could not have been on too many people's short lists of where Alonso was going to end up. The O's won 75 games this year in the AL East, which is the most stacked division in baseball, and it's funny, for a team that has a ton of good young players, every single one of them disappointed this year. Their home run leaders were Gunnar Henderson, recently 22-year-old Jackson Holliday, and Jordan Westburg with 17 each. Alonso's career high in home runs from back in his rookie year was 53. That would have been more than all 3 of those guys combined. He also drove in more runs this year than Gunnar and Holliday combined. Pete is that good, but the Orioles' offense this year was also that bad. The biggest issue with Alonso has always been and always will be his defense. He made the most errors among first basemen with 10, and all of the other advanced metrics suggest, yeah, he's awful. There's going to be a day very soon where the Orioles ask him to at least split time at DH. He's only appeared at DH 3 times in the last 2 years combined, And as slow and as defensively poor as he is, it seems kind of baffling from a non-Mets fan's perspective. Most everyday catchers or first basemen get relegated to a good deal of DH by the time that they're into their mid-30s to prolong their career. And if you know his bat is the only thing that you're paying $31 million a year for, then Baltimore would be better off getting him accustomed to it right away. And I don't think that means every day, but let's say for the coming year, maybe 25 or 30% of his starts should come at DH. And if you're keeping track, this last one makes the New York Metropolitans probably the most devastated roster over the course of one offseason of all time. They already had one of the more dramatic late-season collapses to miss the playoffs. We've chronicled that enough. And now they're going to lose a ton of the protection in the lineup that they had for Juan Soto, the highest-paid player in the history of sports. Francisco Lindor is still there at shortstop and is a future Hall of Famer like Soto himself, an MVP candidate every year like Soto himself, but there is dangerously little else left. The Mets also got rid of Brandon Nimmo, a fan favorite in the outfield, and a 20-plus home run, 90-plus RBI producer each of the last 2 years. Alonso is the all-time franchise home run leader. Diaz is third in team history in saves. And Nimmo is a relatively pedestrian 8th all-time in wins above replacement for the Mets. Soto is going to start counting down the days until he can opt out of that circus sideshow of a contract and find a team that takes themselves a little bit more seriously. Thank you, baseball, for dragging me back in with some of these absurd deals when I wanted to leave it alone and just revisit when the snow melted and things turned green again. But no such luck. MLB winter meetings and the deals to come out of them were pretty fascinating. Here's the last few things I'm watching, reading about, and generally following this week. It's the first week of the fantasy football playoffs for many of us, and the injury reports around the league are reminding us that it's December. Personally, one of my rosters has 7 guys questionable, and Jaden Daniels out. I cannot tell you the kind of anxiety that gives me. Fortunately, I do have Brock Purdy in both of my leagues, who has a very juicy matchup against the Titans on Sunday. It's one of those weeks, though. If you have a situation like I do, there's no one tip that I could give you that would save you. Check the injury reports often and read them closely, I guess. And then you hope that your opponent ends up leaving in somebody who ends up inactive or something like that. You've made it this far, hopefully, so have fun with it. I won't because I'm playing against Jahmyr Gibbs in both my leagues, but maybe you will. And finally, the Oklahoma City Thunder are 24-1 on the year. I kind of want to just leave it there and let that speak for itself. But this start is tied with the 73-win Warriors from 2016 for the best start in NBA history. The current win streak is at 16 for the Thunder, which, believe it or not, isn't even halfway to the all-time record of 33 by the 71 Lakers. OKC's last win was the biggest blowout of the entire season across the league, beating the Suns by 49 points to put them into the NBA Cup semifinals. Saturday night, they'll have a chance to set that record for the best start in league history against the Spurs. And that'll wrap it up. So happy to report that I did, in fact, finish my capstone project for my master's degree on Wednesday. It was a long 18 months. In order to be able to get it done that quick, you don't get really long breaks between terms. I'm thinking I might link my final vision poster for you guys in Canva, as I haven't published it anywhere else yet. It's essentially a big 3-page long infographic proposing a social innovation of your choice. I chose to write about a free community for sports media professionals to share resources and knowledge and things like that, and I called it Sports Social. I'll get it up on LinkedIn soon, too. That's kind of down the list a little bit. Shout out all my classmates, my professors, and Syracuse University. It's been a great time. And thanks for coming back every single week. If you are new here, we are so happy to have you. Either way, check out all my socials, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, @TheVoiceOfTanner, X, just Voice of Tanner, YouTube, the whole thing spelled out with spaces. Connect on LinkedIn, leave a like, comment, and share. Catch you next week. This has been Season 2, Episode 39 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Thanks for joining me.
He's gonna have to fight! Bang! Pressure's coming! Dumped! Hogtied! When you've given everything, what will the record books say about you?